High in the western Himalayas, cradled in the Karakoram Mountains of northern Pakistan, lies a plateau known as the Land of Giants. The towering K2 dominates this landscape, and to the southwest of it lies the Deosai Plateau, the second highest plateau in the world. From its rugged hills, the legendary Nanga Parbat can be glimpsed in the distant southeast. This icy wilderness is covered in a blanket of snow for 8 months of the year. But even in the extreme depths of winter, these plains are not barren. There is life here. There are thought to have been over 10,000 Himalayan brown bears at one time in northern Pakistan and Kashmir. Today, the species is one of the most threatened in South Asia. Their numbers across the region have declined by half in the last 100 years. They're now only found in small pockets in India, Pakistan, Afghanistan, China, and Kazakhstan. Repeated glaciations in High Asia probably decimated a large part of the population and fragmented the rest. Over the centuries, bears have been hunted, almost to extinction. But in the unique haven of the Deosai Plateau, guarded by the sentinels of the Western Himalayas and the Karakoram Mountains, the bears have found a sanctuary. For 4 months of the year, as the strong mountain sunlight warms the earth, the rolling plains of the Deosai come to life. The summer meadows of this Himalayan ecoregion are strewn with swathes of wild flowers. Over 340 species of plants are spread across these plains and hills. And the song of more than 200 types of birds fills the air. Deosai is also home to 18 species of mammals, with plenty of playful golden marmots on hand to delight visitors. But there is another resident of Deosai that's the most striking of all. The Himalayan brown bear. The Deosai National Park was established here in 1993 to protect the brown bear's survival. These bears can be found in many areas of the world. The bears of the Deosai Plateau represent an ancient lineage from the Great Himalayan region. Hibernating in dens in the lower valleys on and off through the winter, they come up to feed on the rich grasses of the park in summer. These bears have thick coats which can be blonde to dark brown in colour, and a distinctive hump sits on its shoulders. Its slightly concave face is topped with large ears and a long snout. Deosai bears are smaller than some of their genetic cousins. Even when fully grown, males only weigh around 120 to 150 kilograms and measure about 1.5 to 2 meters in length. The Deosai bears have the lowest reproductive rates among brown bear populations anywhere in the world. At a much trimmer 60 to 70 kilograms, female bears don't reach sexual maturity till around 8 years old and usually produce just a single cub. The cub may stick to his mother for as long as 5 years, and while he is with her, she will not mate again. The habitat, which has very little nutritious food to offer, is partly to blame for the low reproductive rates. Only 12% of the plain is regarded as good feeding ground for the bears. Its large canine teeth are capable of tearing meat, but these bears are largely vegetarian, eating grasses, bulbs and roots, which they'll dig up with their long claws. Insects and fish are on the menu too. Other small mammals, such as marmots, can also prove tempting. Although with their vigilant sentries on duty, they're a lot harder to catch. The Deosai National Park is the sole habitat in the whole of South Asia that can claim an increasing population of brown bears. In 1993, though the situation was very different, the Himalayan Wildlife Foundation recognized that the very survival of the bears in Deosai was at risk and decided to act. They gathered international funding and set up a field camp, conducting vital research on all aspects of the bears and their habitat. The Himalayan Wildlife Foundation worked with local communities to foster conservation awareness and also recruited park staff from here. By 2007, the population of brown bears in the park had grown significantly. 43 of these fascinating creatures were now living in the Deosai Plateau. The dedicated efforts of the conservation organizations had paid off. When the Deosai National Park was created in 1993, little was known about the ecological needs of the bears. The park was divided into zones to allow for the shared use of resources between wildlife and people.
The area in Deosai that we call the core area consists of 1,400 square kilometers. The core area is where the population density was greater and where they preferred to live.
Despite the demarcation of zones, the core areas are not always respected as being for the sole use of the wild animals. Gujars journey annually from the plains of the Punjab to the Deosai, bringing their large herds of livestock to feed on the rich summer pastures. Their life is a hard one, of the sort typically associated with nomadic people.
This is our life. We travel continually with our livestock, goats, horses and donkeys. Initially we were fine. Life was good for us from 1947 onwards. Now we are fed up because the forest department has closed the forest to us in places.
"50 or 60 years before Deosai was declared a national park, there were only 1 or 2 families who used to come here with a small number of livestock, and their impact on the park was not significant. Over the years, these families have multiplied and increased in number. However, the area of the park remains the same.
In 2012, approximately 14,000 livestock grazed the pastures of the Deosai National Park. Even more devastating for the park, the shepherds cut vast amounts of shrub for fuel, with dire consequences.
The actual issue is, this is an elevated area situated at heights of over 12,000 to 13,000 feet. The growth of plants is slow. A species of salix takes years to grow back.
In the Deosai National Park, the construction of roads and bridges is allowing for easier access across the plateau. In 2013, there were 28 human occupations in the park. 15 of these belong to the Gujars. But tourists also came up to enjoy summer in the park and set up camps here.
Initially, when construction started in Deosai, we tried to stop it. According to the rules and regulations of any national park, no permanent structures should be built that change or disturb the natural beauty.
In recent years, the Gilgit-Baltistan authorities have been persuaded that such development is beneficial, with little regard for the needs of the wildlife and fragile ecosystem.
हमारी तैयारी को
We are not really prepared for it. It will definitely have a negative impact when tourism increases, until and unless we create awareness amongst the tourists who come here.
Many of the tourists coming to the park, especially from the nearby areas, have very little understanding of good environmental behaviour. Instead of acting as caretakers of this stunning piece of national heritage, the visitors often inflict harm to it. Some light fires in the park and leave pools of trash, most of it being non-biodegradable. There is no system whatsoever for dealing with all this trash which they leave behind. Further shrinking the financial resources of the park is the arrangement that visitors from within the region don't need to pay to enter here.
We have not focused on ways to generate income. Nominal charges are collected from tourists who are not from Gilgit-Baltistan. They pay 40 rupees per head, while $8 is collected from foreign tourists.
But even these minimal charges are not put towards the management of the park. There are many settlements in the valleys below the Deosai National Park. In the villages of Karmang, Montoka, Dapa, Shilla and Sudpara, the local people live a life of extreme hardship. Investment projects from donors are extremely hard to come by in this region, and little has changed here in the last 100 years. The summer brings little respite. In these few months, all the tasks that will allow the villagers to endure the extreme, bitter cold of winter need to be completed. The valleys were once forested, but now the slopes are bare. Dung is the only source of fuel. The women spend long hours collecting and drying this. A back-breaking daily chore. The villagers rely heavily on their livestock to eke out a living. The men of the village have nowhere else to graze their livestock other than the lush meadows of the Deosai Plateau. When the park was created, they claimed traditional grazing rights, which had to be respected. With each added demand on the park's resources, what's left for the bears is steadily diminishing. Although bear numbers have not fallen, they're no longer rising. It may well be that this fragile landscape has borne as much pressure as it possibly can. If it is to continue as a sanctuary and a breeding ground for these endangered bears, its precious resources will have to be more carefully protected. The presence of humans in the bear's habitat is a reality, and local communities have to be integrated into conservation efforts. When park rangers and staff are drawn from local communities, they take home a better understanding of the conservation issues. An awareness campaign to enlist the support of the local communities is also key. Perhaps most valuable of all, is planting the seed of awareness in young minds. After all, it is in the hands of these local children that the fate of the bears will one day rest. Finding alternative sources of subsistence for the communities is also vital. Reducing their dependence on livestock will help to protect the bear's habitat. With initiatives like these, the lives of the local people could be greatly improved. But much more still needs to be done in order to preserve the bear's habitat. The increasing incursions by the Gujars into additional park areas have to be addressed. The biggest hazard they pose to the park, however, is the amount of shrub they cut. Strengthening the park's revenue stream is essential, and charging a small fee for all visitors could provide some of the funds the Wildlife Department desperately needs. The roads and structures that have been built are proving detrimental to the habitat and wildlife, which can thrive only where there is very little human activity. Once the precedent for building within the park is established, it's hard to stop. The needs of the park and its creatures could soon be completely overwhelmed as so-called development marches on. There's also an urgent need for environmental education for visitors to the Deosai and a stronger enforcement of park rules so that they don't damage this unique wilderness. To restore the park to its former pristine condition, a proper system of garbage disposal will need to be put in place. As the snow begins to fall in October, the bears and the plateau will amble towards their long winter slumber. For this period, nature will be its own guardian, and the land will have a reprieve under its blanket of snow. But in order to flourish, this fragile ecosystem also needs to be protected through the warm summer months. It cannot sustain the growing onslaught of human demands upon it and remain unchanged. It is time for us to take care of this land of giants, allowing it to regenerate and provide a sanctuary to some of the world's most rare and magnificent creatures. Responsibility for protecting this exceptional treasure now rests with the authorities and people of Gilgit-Baltistan. To preserve it, they will need the support of international donors and all of us who hope to safeguard Deosai for future generations.